I wasn't intending on making any videos specifically about The Mandalorian Season 3 until it was finished. I am planning to make a season review, but I reserve all judgment until the story has been fully told. I even sometimes get frustrated when people say, well, that's not good, that doesn't make sense, that's not explained very well. Guys, the story isn't finished yet. You wouldn't do that with any other medium. You wouldn't pick up a book, get 3 chapters in and say, this book isn't telling me the whole story. Though I understand that there are many things that are frustrating about The Mandalorian Season 3. Namely, the Mandalorian no longer being the main character, Grogu having no reason to be here, Episode 3 seemingly being a backdoor pilot to a completely different show, certain story elements not integrated very well, but I reserve judgment because either these things could be resolved by the end of the season, or the seriousness of them and their impact on the show could be lessened or worsened by looking at the full picture. But there is one thing I don't foresee any fix for, because they've pretty much explained it in the episode itself. And I'm just dying to talk about it. People generally had good things to say about episode 5. Improved writing quality, it finally integrating other story elements at least minimally, getting to see the Mandos as a well-oiled elite fighting force, and it feeling more like old school Mandalorian episodes. But there is one glaringly awful thing that was stopping me from enjoying it, and that is the way means nothing now. I have always been a big defender of the way, not as good practice in terms of actually living your life, but as a great story element. I'm currently in the middle of making a series that is at least in part about how good it is. I understand if it's not an element that interests you and you would rather see the Old Republic style let's war because Mandos. Let's start a riot! And I'm not knocking those Mandos. Again, part of my series is about how interesting a culture that thinks like that actually is. But whichever you prefer, it is just that, a preference. Because these people have lost their homes, mostly thanks to their own centuries of infighting, plus the final nail in the coffin being placed there by Sidious's machinations, the pacifist regime, and the Empire going Hiroshima on them. It's easy to see how anyone who was even a little bit religious or culturally conscious who survived something like that, mostly due to that faith, would become incredibly dogmatic. The Armorer says,
they lost their way, and we lost our world. Had our sect not been cloistered on the moon of Concordia, we would have not survived the Great Purge.
And Din says,
our people are scattered like stars in the galaxy. The creed is how we survived.
Imagine a religious person praying in a church, and the city around them is bombed, but the church is left untouched. Don't you think that person would become very serious about following their religious practices after an experience like that, because in their eyes, their faith saved them? Don't get me wrong, I don't agree with that, but it makes sense, it's interesting, it's human. It's a spiritual aspect of Star Wars we haven't really seen thus far. And it also brings up the problems inherent in this position, namely the fact that it separates them from non-believers, insulates them, stifles their growth, stifles their population growth, and anyone who goes against the tenets for any reason is exiled. Now?
Bo-katan walks both worlds. She can bring all tribes together.
It's all cool. Now, they frame this as if the mythosaur sighting is a sign that bo-katan is the one to unite their people and can therefore take off her helmet. There are some glaring problems with this in terms of story, theme, and just simply the way people with this mindset act. And I have defended this mindset. But only as long as it remains consistent and isn't thrown away for the sake of convenience with a barely even half thought of excuse. Alright, back up. Let's set the scene. Bo-katan walks in to talk to the Armorer. She talks about the history of the Forge and its connection to Mandalore and its people, and then she says,
remove your helmet.
And this is a well done scene otherwise. It's well acted, it's tense, it's emotional. but it destroys everything. The Armorer tells bo-katan to remove her helmet. Why?
Our people have strayed from the way, but it is not enough for a few to walk it. We must walk the way together. All Mandalorians. I was taught that the mythosaur existed only in legends, and yet you saw it.
It is a sign that the next age is upon us.
You have walked both worlds. You are the one who can unite us.
So basically, bo-katan saw the mythosaur, and the mythosaur foretells the reunification of the Mandalorian people, and Bo has walked both ways, so can now remove her helmet and not be denying the creed, or at least be accepted by it. What? First of all, both? What is this other way you're talking about? Din, who was raised in this creed, tells Bo the first time he meets her,
Do not cover your face. You are not Mandalorian.
and the Armorer says to Din,
You are a Mandalorian no more.
and repeats to Din,
You have removed your helmet. You are no longer Mandalorian.
and now bo-katan can remove her helmet, and not only are they cool with that, they see it as the thing that should be done. This is something you were willing to exile a lifelong loyal member of your tribe for. Not only that, he removed his helmet to save a foundling, protecting which is something also sacred to your creed.
You have done the highest honor of the creed, saving a foundling.
Hold up.
You are no longer Mandalorian.
Not only that, Din had the freaking Darksaber, the significance of which the writers have so far been ignoring. Another very sacred symbol of your people and its leadership. You were so convinced, and I sympathize with why, that complete adherence to the way is what saved your people, and you were willing to do that. I have no argument against that as a story point, because tragically in real life, that happens. Now, I'm not talking about religious people, I'm talking about dogmatic people. Of course, religion and dogmatism do often make compatible bedfellows, but they can be mutually exclusive. There are people out there who do think like this. Now, not only do you believe there is another way, not only do you believe it's acceptable to adhere to this other way, but you believe that it's possible to adhere to both. No, that's not how this works. That's not how people work. You cannot have your helmet and eat it too. And just to show you what I mean about dogmatic people and give you an example of Star Wars doing this very well is the aptly named clone trooper Dogma. For those of you who haven't seen the show, a clone battalion, which ordinarily belongs to Anakin, is being headed by another Jedi, one who has a very high casualty rate. The main clone of the show, Captain Rex, is put in the difficult position of following the orders of a superior when he knows they're ill-advised and put his men in unnecessary danger. It is important to note that the clones are not only raised but bred to be obedient. Their entire lives have been pushing them towards this mindset. But some individualistic clones like ARC Trooper 5s do emerge and know instinctually how wrong this is. Then you get people like Dogma, whose entire life is surrounding how he was raised to think and behave. And if you look at it from his point of view, you can really understand. He was basically bred to be fed to an unfeeling war machine, and everyone he grew up with and cares about was bred for the same purpose. He has to believe the system is just, because if he doesn't, 1, his brothers are dying for nothing, and 2, what the hell is he even here for? Jedi Master Krell, wannabe Sith by the way, throws him and his brothers into unnecessary dangerous battles. He still follows the rules. People argue against his methods with facts. That doesn't matter. The rules are in place for a reason, so we have to follow. Krell rejects a perfectly good plan to minimize casualties and win the battle. He must have had a reason. The clones do it anyway and succeed. They were wrong to do it because they went against the rules. His brothers are to be executed despite saving lives, winning, and achieving the objective. No, they must deserve it because them's the rules. It is only when he basically has the prophet, shall we say, the conveyor of the rules, tell him point blank that he duped him, was using him, and none of this even fucking matters. Only then does his dogmatism crack. This is perfect. Here, the reason we have for the Armourer deciding that not only is there another way to do things, but that other way is a good thing to have, I know what they are trying to do here. The Covert are a small group who don't accept outsiders, which includes any Mandalorian who takes off their helmet, making them instantly not Mandalorian in their eyes. Any alliance between them and other Mandalorians is going to be fraught with tension because you've got one side believing the others aren't Mandalorian, and the other side thinking the people sitting across from them are creepy cultish extremists, which... fair. Which is actually an interesting problem to resolve. Narrative tension, political strife, something Star Wars is generally quite good at. But instead of trying to right away this dogmatism can be eased, that their prejudice against scandalously nakedly faced Mandalorians could be overcome, you just say, she saw a mythosaur, knew coming, Bo, you've lived without your helmet and you've lived with it for a brief time. Now you can do both. Not only does that make no sense, not only is it lazy, it is the worst kind of laziness because it wastes so much potential. It gets you out of a writing situation that not only should you have wrote your way out of, but it should have been the focus. Again, you have a group of Mandalorians who believe that removing your helmet makes you not Mandalorian. If the goal of your story is to reunite Mandalore, this is a conflict you are going to have to write your way out of. How do you do that? You faff around for most of the season as if you don't only have 8 episodes to tell your story. Then, she saw a mythosaur. How did the Clone Wars manage to write its way both in and out of this scenario in 22 minutes when you can't even think of a lazy excuse that makes sense? Because if you want to think about this even more, and I know, fun, I understand that the sighting of the mythosaur was a foretold, even holy event. That gives the Armourer no reason to believe that removing the helmet is okay now. In fact, bo-katan was bathing in the sacred waters when she saw the mythosaur and hasn't removed her helmet since. If anything, this would be reason for the Armourer to further believe that the way is right. And that isn't even touching on the Darksaber, again the significance of which the writers have been ignoring for the entire season. The Armourer preached that it must be won in combat for leadership. Now, thanks to a couple of successful missions and seeing a mythosaur, that discounts all of that. What was it you said, Madam Armourer?
Bo-katan is a cautionary tale.
Didn't you say this was a bad idea?
She once laid claim to rule Mandalore based purely on blood and the sword you now possess. But it was gifted to her and not won by creed.
Okay, listen. I may be eating my words by the end of this. They may pull some writing wizardry out that suddenly makes all of this make sense. I can't imagine every scenario. But I seriously doubt they're going to make this make sense. I seriously doubt this laziness will be then followed by a brilliantly written overcoming of different creeds. And even if they did, that still wouldn't make removing the helmet is okay because mythosaur makes sense. If only the Israelis and the Palestinians or the Sunnis and the Shiites could be as changeable as the Armourer. But anyway, they may sort this out. I won't be betting on it. I did see one of the Mandalorian body doubles talking about an upcoming scene between Bo and Din. He described it as having physical and verbal tension and chemistry, and I hear a lot of people speculating that this may be romantic in some sense, like she has the sighting of the mythosaur and Din has the Darksaber, and together they will bring the Mandalorian people. Now, my money is on the Darksaber as a dangling plot point, so Bo and Din are going to get into a duel for it as a simple way to pass the Darksaber to Bo, because they have built her up too much to not be the leader, and Din seems less than interested in it. So if they pivot now, although to be fair, they've pivoted enough already, so what's one more, I suppose. But yeah, my money is on that being a duel, so bo-katan can take possession of the Darksaber. The writers can resolve that thread they ignored, and Bo can say to the other Mandos, say, here, happy now? See, you talk about those guys with their helmets, what about you lot and this thing? Anyway, we'll have to wait and see, but for now, and I suspect forever, the way means nothing anymore. I defended this theme so much against people who said it's impractical, it's stupid, it doesn't make sense. Thank you, writers. Thank you, Disney Plus. Thank you for proving them right. She saw a mythosaur, she saw a mythosaur, she saw a mythosaur, she saw a mythosaur.